Little brother, the time has come for you to fulfill your destiny. Behold, my greatest gift to you. The Thunderstone. Join me and conquer the continent at 130 base speed. We shall conduct the Eeveelution ceremony immediately.
Big brother.
Objection!
Little brother, stop. You may move first, but then what? Your true birthright is the Water Stone. Join me, blood is thicker than water.
Big sister.
Little brother, don't listen to her lies. You can trust me, kids shouldn't vape.
Little brother, don't listen to his lies. You can trust me. That creep is always trying to get party members to touch his baton.
Big brother. Big sister. Big brother. Big sister. I choose to forge my own path.
How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
Now I am complete.
Incredible. Is this the power of the Fire Emblem? I feel so warm. Or maybe I've always been too cold. Big brother, big sister, I've had a revelation. This is who I was meant to be. I hope that you can accept the choice I've made.
Die, traitor!
Eevee!
Welcome to the Eeveelution tier list. I don't like Eevee, but you probably do, so thanks for joining.
What are we? Some kind of Eeveelution team?
The Eeveelutions are insanely popular. If you go on any sort of Pokemon discussion group, you will be assailed by endless ambush reinforcements of Eeveelution discussion. Eeveelution fan art. Fakemon Eeveelutions. What's your favorite Eeveelution? What Eeveelution are you? Eevee, 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 Eevee. Hey, do you like Eevee? Do you like gacha? Oh, well, great news, because there's an Eevee gacha right here. You always win, because you can't lose with Eeveelutions. I love Eeveelutions. I'm sick of it. So if you like the Eeveelutions, you're in the right video. And I picked the wrong career. I think I probably look kind of unhinged from your perspective, spewing this much vitriol at fans of, very cute, very lovable, friend-shaped Eeveelutions. But in my line of work, I gotta deal with these Eeveelution PFP freaks non-stop. Anybody would go absolutely bonkers. These are the people who will look at Penny from Gen 9 and say, oh, she's just like me, for real, whereas I think she's just a psycho who has never interacted with another human in her life. It's not relatable. She's got serious issues. I'm aware of the irony of saying this while being dressed up in a full-body Eevee costume, but gotta earn those pennies. That being said, I don't actually dislike the Eeveelutions. I actually think a lot of them are quite cute, quite cool. I don't mind using them. It's just that I think that they're overrated and underhated. What are the criteria we're going to be using for today's Eeveelution Archetype tier list? Well, we've crafted 4 tiers. We're going to be giving each Eeveelution credit for whatever they do that's valuable. Whether that's in-game, meaning going from your mom's house to the Hall of Fame, or whether it's in competitive. So we're being very generous here with our holistic evaluation process. At the very top, we have Victory. There's an exclamation point there, but I recorded this so that I never actually have to say it myself again.
Victory!
Only had to embarrass myself once, and then I can embarrass myself endless times with the click of a button. To be an Victory tier, I'm gonna say you need to be good both in-game and in competitive. Not necessarily a superstar in either, but maybe like the upper end of viability in both. And then you'll be allowed into the top tier of Victory. Next we have Viable, and I'll say that to be in Viable, you need to be good in either in-game or competitive. And then you can go ahead and saunter into Viable. Do quadrupeds saunter? Beneath Viable, we have Vile, which might actually be a bit too harsh of a name. These would be Eeveelutions that I guess you could use. You've probably got better options. I mean, that sort of applies to all of these, but those in Vile are acceptable. You could do worse. There is a non-meme, possibly like gimmick reason that you would use the Eeveelutions in Vile. And at the very bottom, we've got Evicted. Get these things off my team, out of my boxes. We are talking evolve them for the Dex entry data, and then evict them from your game save. Utterly useless. The Eeveelutions we're going to be ranking today, as if you didn't know who the Eeveelutions were, this is probably the most famous evolution line in Pokemon. These are all in Dex order. We're actually going to be doing Vanilla Unevolved Eevee, then Vaporeon. You've probably also noticed that the legendary beasts are here, and that's because they are Eeveelutions, right? They're Eeveelutions that died in a fire, and then Ho-Oh used Mass Resurrect, but he added some like extra seasoning when he did it. So since the legendary beasts are honorary Eeveelutions, ascended Eeveelutions, I think it's fair enough to talk about them here. And hey, it pads out the video. And if there's anything my videos need, it's more padding. We got Jolteon, we got Raikou, we've got Booster, everyone's favorite, we've got Entei, we've got Espeon, we've got Umbreon, we've got Leafeon, we've got Glaceon, and we've got Sylveon. You probably did recognize all of those, even though Umbreon here is kitted out in his endgame armor. Probably didn't recognize this Eeveelution, even though it's the most powerful of all. How do you evolve into this mighty Eeveelution?
You peasants, tinkering with stones like the children you are. Let me show you the pathway to true power.
Check out the link in the description and pay to win today with Patreon. Thank you to the Patreons for making operations like this possible. How do you think I justified buying an Eevee onesie? Before we rank any of the legit Eeveelutions, I'd like to review some traits that are shared between all of the Eeveelutions, just so we don't have to talk about it again for each and every single one. Get this ad out of here. Oh, no! Stop seeing this. Ad covered content. We'll try not to show that ad again. I don't care what ad you showed. Stellar Idol Project. All of the Eeveelutions have the exact same base stat total of 525, which is fairly high. It's just below what most fully evolved starters are. But more than just having the same BST, they actually have the same stat allocations. It's just that each Eeveelution has that allocation in a different arrangement. Every Eeveelution has their stats distributed in 60, 65, 65, 95, 110, 130, But which stats those values correlate with differ depending on the evolution, and some distributions are better than others. The Eeveelutions were each added to showcase a mechanic of their debut generations. The first three, Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, were added in Generation 1, and they're actually a tutorial for the Evolution Stone mechanic. There's actually a truck outside, so I hope I can catch a Mew. The first three Eeveelutions, Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, were all added in the OG Gen 1, and they're actually tutorials for Evolution Stones. You get your Eevee in Celadon City, which is also where you can just buy the Evolution Stones. The Evolution Stones themselves aren't rare, they're very easy to get. But in Gen 1, there is a trade-off for Stone Evos. The whole point of Stone Evos is that you can evolve instantly for much better stats, but does come at a cost. Stone Evos no longer learn level up moves. So you can evolve your Guardy into a Windy immediately. It is the legendary Pokemon, so of course it's got very good stats, but you're never gonna get Flamethrower if you do that too early.
Archetype! Flamethrower!
The Eeveelutions are an exception to this because the Eeveelutions are the only Gen 1 Pokemon that strictly get better with an Evolution Stone. You're actually supposed to evolve Eevee immediately because you then get a massive BST boost. Eevee stats are trash. You're never supposed to use them, you're supposed to instantly evolve. And for these Gen 1 Stone evolutions, their move pools actually get better. And nowadays, this aspect of the Stone Evos is kind of irrelevant because all Stone Evos are insanely busted. In modern generations, you should just Stone Evo immediately with every Pokemon because you instantly get way better stats, all the better traits of the evolved Pokemon, and you get better moves because of free move relearning, which now also draws from your new evolved move pool. Can we test this? Espeon and Umbreon were added in Generation 2, and they showcase friendship and time. Espeon evolves from your best friend Eevee in the day, and Umbreon evolves from your best friend Eevee at night. You could also consider Umbreon a bit of a showcase for the Dark type, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the Dark type mascot. Leafeon and Glaceon were both added in Gen 4, and they're a showcase of how the Sinnoh region sucks ass. So of course, Leafeon and Glaceon are also the worst Eeveelutions. Spoilers. Both of them are Stone Evos, but it's not a stone you can actually pick up and apply at your own convenience. They're overworld stones that you have to be in close proximity to. For Leafeon, that's a mossy rock, and then for Glaceon, it's an icy rock. And eventually they just sort of ditched this mechanic and made Leafeon a Leafstone Evo and made Glaceon an Ice Stone Evo. Even though they didn't apply this treatment to Espeon and Umbreon, who could potentially use the Sunstone and the Moonstone. And the final evolution, Sylveon, was added in Pokemon X and Y very recently, 12 years ago. And Sylveon is a showcase of the affection mechanic. Affection, of course, is not friendship, the same way that avoid is not dodge. And Sylveon is also the ambassador of the fairy type. You can consider all of the Eeveelutions an embodiment of their typing. Singular. Because all of the Eeveelutions are filthy pure types, which is a massive disadvantage for all of them. In general, you really want to be a dual typing. Dual typing has a zillion advantages. Most obvious one is that you get a secondary stab typing because you have two types. A second typing almost always correlates to a deeper move pool that allows you to draw not only from moves of that type, but moves adjacent to that type. So if you're a water type, you can almost certainly also learn ice moves. If you're a ground type, you can almost certainly also learn rock moves. None of the Eeveelutions get to benefit from the dual type double dip, which has disastrous consequences because all of the Eeveelutions, without exception, have horrendous move pools. You want to talk about move puddles. That's what Vaporeon is melting into when it uses acid armor. For offensive Pokemon, dual typing is almost a strict advantage because of the double stab options. Of course, offensive Pokemon also have to reckon with the defensive implications of double typing, which are overall, I would say, positive because of immunity interactions. Normal types are weak to fighting, immune to ghost. Ghost types are weak to ghost, immune to fighting, but if you combine them, you get a Pokemon that is immune to both ghost and fighting, even though some of their constituent types are actually weak to those types. For the most part, an offensive dual type gaining a quadruple weakness really doesn't matter that much, because a double damage super effective hit probably also would have killed you, right? The fact that a quadruple weakness super kills you doesn't really matter, right? You don't get put on a different level of the Pokemon Tower, right? It's all the same graves. For defensive Pokemon, even though they normally appreciate dual typing as well, I would say it's not as grievous to be a monotype. Defensive Pokemon tend to run a lot of utility moves. They might not even run a stab move, forget about two. And the major advantage of being a defensive Pokemon without a quadruple weakness is that that quadruple weakness can never be sniped. Could you imagine Ferrothorn without a quadruple fire weakness? You don't really have to imagine, it's called Ferrothorn in Rain, right? So for the more defensive among the Eeveelutions, they don't quite suffer as much from the monotype curse that affects their entire bloodline. Since all of the Eeveelutions evolve from base Eevee, they all can access the moves that base Eevee could get, either through level up or through breeding. This one, Baton Pass. We're gonna be seeing a lot of this one, so pay attention. Got it memorized? And it's a TM, but all of them are in the NBA. They are all ballin'. All of them get Shadow Ball. And the move pools are so dire that pretty much all of them elect to equip the B-Ball just because there's nothing else they're proficient with. If you were there in the live, then you actually had the opportunity to vote on your favorite Eeveelution, which I will showcase now! With 207 votes at the time of tallying, Jolteon is the decisive winner with 22% of the vote. Then we have Espeon at 14%, Umbreon at 12%, Sylveon at 12%, Leafeon at 10%, ooh, poor Booster at under 10%. Then Glaceon, and wow, actually, dead last is Vaporeon. Huh, I thought Vaporeon was pretty popular. For each Eeveelution, we probably are going to be discussing their designs, but I don't actually think that it's going to affect their rankings at all. We're going to try and be pretty objective, but for full transparency, my favorite Eeveelution is probably Flareon. And then after that, I would probably say Jolteon would be my pick for my favorites. First up is Eevee in its vanilla unevolved form. It's a bit strange to actually be ranking this thing. The whole point of Eevee is to evolve into one of its zillion branching Evos, right? But for some reason, especially since the Switch era with Let's Go Eevee, unevolved Eevee has been treated as a sort of secondary mascot, and they've been giving gimmicks specifically to unevolved Eevee as if you're supposed to use it in its base form. So should you? Here's Eevee, the evolution Pokemon, so there's sort of a hint here, maybe you want to actually evolve this thing. Japanese name is also Eevee, but if you hear the voice actress, she kind of does this weird B and V sound. It's like Eevee. I don't know why. This says Eevee. If you want an alternate Eevee cry, here you go. Eevee! Adorable, right? Oh! Oh, Eevee the evolution Pokemon. Very smart of the developers to encourage you to evolve this thing immediately by giving it absolute trash can stats. Pure normal typing. Awful. 325 BST. Highest stat? Special defense.
Your magic shall not save you.
If there's an upside to vanilla Eevee, you won't find it here. Partner Eevee from Let's Go Eevee is actually a superior breed. It has better stats, although still far, far inferior to any of the Eeveelutions. I just think it's so bizarre to have an Eevee whose entire thing is that it doesn't evolve. If anything, they should have done what the fan game Super Eevee Edition does, which is have an Eevee that can't stop evolving. It's actually really cool. It's like a Final Fantasy-inspired fan game with an Eevee that can shift between any of its Eeveelutions at any time. It's actually really fun. You should give it a try. Partner Eevee's stats are better than vanilla Eevee. They're still bad. I would call these worse than any of the actual Eeveelutions. But also, Partner Eevee is in a game where stats don't really matter, because the best strategy for every Pokemon is to give them Terra Type 2 diabetes. You just grind their brothers and sisters into a fine paste that you then shove down their throat in the form of species candies. You can beat the game with Caterpie, because you can just buff their stats to an insane amount by forcing them to become cannibals. Even though Partner Eevee is locked in its unevolved vanilla form, it does actually get some toppings that are flavored after its potential Eeveelutions, in the form of these special tutor moves that are equal parts powerful and embarrassing. Bouncy Bubble, Buzzy Buzz, Sizzly Slide, oh Glitzy Glow, oh Batty Bad, oh Sappy Seed, Freezy Frost, Sparkly Swirl, and VV Volley. I actually didn't know this one existed. I'm aware these are games for kids, but I never really felt like the game condescended to you or babied you. If anything, they maybe gave you too much responsibility. You're a 10-year-old kid going out on an adventure, and usually most of the trainers you beat are amazed at your strength for your age. But in Let's Go, a game explicitly aimed at disgusting Let's Go casuals who have, of course, since completely infested and made Pokemon even worse than it was before. These people, if you can even call them such,
I hate working with these people.
They need Baby Talk, they need Bouncy Bubble, oh they need Buzzy Buzz, oh they need Sizzly Slide. All of these special awakened Eeveelution gene moves have 90 base power. They can be either special or physical, and they all have a guaranteed chance of their secondary effect. And yet these secondary effects are, pretty modest. Bouncy Bubble, known in Japanese as Iki Iki Bubble, Lively Bubble, 90 base power special water move, and it sucks the opponent dry, so you leech 50% of the damage you deal as healing. It's not a very watery effect. I thought this would be like a status cleanse. Buzzy Buzz is a 90 base power special electric move known in Japanese as Bidi Bidi Eriki, and it's a guaranteed paralysis. So it's Thunder Wave, but it actually has 90 base power. Very fair. Sizzly Slide is a fire type move, 90 base power physical, known in Japanese as Mera Mera Ban, and it's a guaranteed burn. Remember Sacred Fire, one of the best moves in the franchise? 100 base power physical, 50% burn. Not sizzly enough. People talk about the slippery slope to power creep. What about the Sizzly Slide to power creep? Glitzy Glow, which you can only learn by bringing Eevee to the Glitz Pits. I think that's what it was called in Paper Mario. Glitzy Glow, 90 base power, 100 accuracy psychic move, known in Japanese as Doba Doba Aura, the Gushing Aura. I thought Gush was a water move. It's psychic, except you also get Light Screen. Cool. Maybe they should have reflected on how strong this was. Hope you've enjoyed the upbeat commentary so far, because there's nothing to be happy about here with Batty Bad. It's a dark type move, ooh. 90 base power special, known in Japanese as Waru Waru Zone, the Bad Bad Zone. 90 base power, and here's your reflect. When you're lost in the dark type, look for the light screen. You won't find it because this move sets up reflect. From your Leafeon gene, you get Sappy Seed, 90 base power physical grass, known in Japanese as Suku Suku Bomba, the fast-growing bomber. H-Bomber's alternate Eeveelution fan channel. Sappy Seed deals damage and plants a seed on the target. Main article... Seeding. I ain't clicking this. It applies Leech Seed. Your Glaceon gene grants you Freezy Frost. 90 base power, special ice move. Known in Japanese as... Kochi Kochi Frosto. The Frozen Stiff Frost. Does not insta-freeze your opponent. Instead, it negates all stat changes that have happened, so it's a haze effect. Remember Clear Smog? How it's a really good move even though it has 60 base power and is arguably the worst attacking type in the game in Poison? What if it had more power and it was one of the best attacking types in the game? What about that? Pretty cool, right? Sylveon Gene grants you Sparkly Swirl. 90 base power special fairy move, known in Japanese as Kira Kira Storm. Fun fact, they just banned something called Kira Kira names in Japan. So Kira Kira names are sort of like intentionally annoying and flashy names. They do this sometimes in English as well, where you just take a common name but you spell it in kind of a ridiculous way. It's that same thing, but in Japanese, with Japanese characters, so you can imagine how annoying this is from an administrative standpoint. I understand why they banned it. Sparkly Swirl apparently smells really good because it's a 90 base power aromatherapy. Just cures all status from you and your team, in addition to probably killing your opponent because it's a 90 base power fairy move. And finally, partner Eevee's Limit Break, the Eevee Volley. I thought Eevee was a black mage. When I said Limit Break, I guess I wasn't really kidding, because in Japanese it's called Break. The Eevee Break. Eevee Volley deals damage and bypasses accuracy checks to always hit. The base power of Eevee Volley is dependent on the friendship of the user. The greater the user's friendship, the greater the power. And the power is just friendship divided by 2.5. The base power of Eevee Volley varies between 1 at the minimum friendship value of 0 and 102 at the maximum friendship value of 255. It's literally just return, but they gave it a special animation. Did you guys know that Eevee gets insane favoritism in all of its forms? You might consider this move an example of artificial scarcity because they removed return, but then gave it to only Eevee as a special move. I maybe can't even call it a move because it doesn't take up one of your 4 move slots. It's just a bonus action, 5th move that you can use because Eevee is just so special. This really is basically a limit break. This literally breaks the limit on 4 move slot syndrome. The Eevee Volley. Unfortunately, you can only access this move by sacrificing your dignity and waggling your Joy-Con vigorously. I never intend to do that on camera, so for me this move may as well be inaccessible. Luckily for us, all of these moves are quarantined to not only Gen 7, but specifically to partner Eevee in Gen 7, which exists in its own meta very far away, where I never have to look. So you could sort of just consider this move overview a history lesson, because you will never encounter these moves again. Good riddance. Really glad that Smeargle doesn't have the artistic chops to sketch up these moves, because they would be pretty oppressive. Back in the vanilla timeline, where Eevee is not our dear partner, we've got these god-awful stats to work with. What kind of bonus gimmicks could possibly make this stat template worth it? Well, the worst gimmick in Pokemon, Dynamax, was given not to an Eeveelution, but to Eevee itself. There is a Dynamax Eevee form. Keep in mind that Dynamax doesn't change your stats, it only doubles your HP, and Eevee has horrendous HP, in addition to horrendous everything else, so stats-wise, this is not gonna save you, but you do get a special move. You get G Max Cuddle. Kyodai Hoyo. Huge hug. Does Hoyo mean hug? You can tell how lonely I am. Apparently I don't know the Japanese word for hug. gshow.org. Discarded tiles. What in the world? What is Hoyo? Isn't that the company that makes a bunch of like gacha slop? MiHoYo? But they're like Chinese. I'm serious, I don't know what Hoyo means. I don't know why this is called hug. So what does this move actually do? G-Max Cuddle inflicts damage on a target and makes all opponents of the opposite gender of the user become infatuated with it. So on more than half of targets, this will not have a bonus effect, because there's a greater than 50% chance that the enemy is either the same gender or genderless. And whether it's physical or special depends on what normal move you use as the base for your G-Max Cuddle. Alright, so I think I can pretty safely call this completely useless. There is no reason you would ever spend your Dynamax on Eevee just to use G-Max Cuddle. You would never use this, ever. It actually might be a good idea not to even attempt it, because the G-Max cry of Eevee is like anti-ASMR. It's like they shout in your ear while also whispering. I guess they used a Boom Burst as the base for G-Max Cuddle. Terrible typing, terrible stats. It's starting to sound like you would only ever send out base Eevee as a last resort. Wait a minute. Eevee has access to a move, Last Resort. Very funny Japanese name. Totteoki. The best. Well, you save the best for last, so Last Resort is 100 accuracy, 140 base power physical normal move. That really solid stats. But the gimmick is that you can't just select this move. You have to use all of your other moves first, and you can't just cheese it by deleting your other 3 moves and leaving only Last Resort. You have to use at least one other move, so you could combo it with Fake Out, and then you can access your Last Resort. This is a pretty ironic move name, because if you're using this move, it's not your Last Resort, right? It's part of Plan A. It's the opposite. Luckily, Eevee is not the only one who booked a stay at the Last Resort. There's tons of other Pokemon that can also access this move, so that's where you would actually use it as an attack. As we've discussed at length, Vanilla Eevee has horrendous stats. So even though 100 accuracy, 140 power, not only with stab, with actually adaptability stab, because Eevee actually gets adaptability as an ability. Even though those are very good numbers, they're all multiplied by trash can stats, so forget about actually using this to attack your opponent. You've got to apply the Z factor. The Z crystal has a unique interaction with Last Resort on unevolved Eevee. It allows you to access Extreme Evo Boost, known in Japanese as 9 Eeboru Boost. Eeboru? Where's Kane? Was that a Bible joke? No, Fire Emblem. I've never read the Bible. Now, unfortunately, I can't actually show you the Extreme Evo Boost animation, because it also has a unique interaction with YouTube videos. You're almost guaranteed to get copyright claimed, which is very strange, because that doesn't happen with most gameplay footage. But for some reason, they're really strict about protecting Extreme Evo Boosts. All you're missing in the animation is sort of a Super Sentai thing, where the 9 Eeveelutions pour their power into young Eevee. And we do actually have a custom, non-copyright claimable version of Eevee gaining the power of all of its forms at once.
What's happening? It's like all the life on Earth is flowing inside me.
Now you die.
Can't control the changes! What have you done to me?
He's absorbing all the DNA. We have to stop him.
Well, Eevee's evolutions are considered mutations, and sometimes you can mutate a little too vigorously, I guess. Ugh. You definitely don't want to use an unlicensed Extreme Evo Boost, because if you actually use the legit one with the Eevinium Crystal, you actually get an insane effect. Yeah, Eevee's stats are horrible, but you actually get a guaranteed double Omni Boost. Wow, I think this is actually the most stats you can possibly gain in a single turn in the entire series. There is no doubt that the actual effect of Extreme Evo Boost is insane. The issue is that this crazy stat boost is on Eevee, and doubling all of these stats is still not actually any good. So it's not as simple as just clicking 9 Evo Boost, getting your super stats, and pulling off a sweep. Keep in mind that to use 9 Evo Boost, you have to hold the Eevinium Z, which means that you cannot hold a Focus Sash, which means that you somehow have to survive a turn with 55 speed and a defensive spread of 55, 50, 65. That is not happening. At the very least, it's not happening solo. This gimmick, and I do think it is a gimmick, has actually seen some success. The way you use it is you do a double battle, you have the diversion Pokemon, which I think is normally a Friend Guard, Eviolite, Follow Me, Clefairy. You draw the fire away from Eevee for 1 turn, you get the crazy 9 Evo boost, and Eevee still can't really use it, like look at this. So what you then do is you either have another Pokemon psych themselves up to copy all of your crazy boosts, or you use Baton Pass, first time we're mentioning it, to go ahead and Baton Touch out your incredible boosts to another Pokemon. The most common recipient of this was actually Crocodile. Definitely a friend of the channel. We talk about Crocodile a lot, and you would use Crocodile for this because Crocodile gets Power Trip, which is the dark type version of stored power. And because you've gotten +2, +4, +6, +8, +10 total stats, your Power Trip absolutely shreds everything. And you want to use Power Trip for this because nothing is immune to dark, whereas some things are immune to psychic. I don't think it actually matters if you're unaware of the +2 attack portion, because the base power is really absurd. Crocodile, of course, gets Stab on Dark because he's a criminal, and he has Moxie, so the Power Trip gets crazier and crazier every single turn. Not that the battle's gonna last that much longer if you pull this off. I think that's about everything we have to say for Vanilla Eevee. Despite being a Pokemon whose entire gimmick is that it's supposed to evolve immediately and into whatever flavor aligns with you as a player, I actually don't think that Vanilla Eevee goes in Evicted. I think it does actually have a place. Partner Eevee has some pretty crazy options, and the 9 Evo Boost cheese did actually unironically see use, even though you never actually use it with Eevee itself. I think we can award Vanilla Eevee an Eevile placement. You would never actually use unevolved Eevee in your in-game playthrough. Just evolve it, bro. What are you doing? But in competitive, there's some kind of zany stuff you can do with the Vanilla Eevee exclusive gimmicks. We can talk about Eevee's design a bit. It's very plain, which I think is good because Eevee is supposed to be just the base template that all of the Eeveelutions then grow from. I think it's a really simple and clean design. Hope that doesn't get copyright claimed. It's a cute little fennec fox. It almost looks like a real animal, just with a little touch of fantasy. Very, very cute. You might say that it's a little bit generic. There's a generic brand Eevee in Pal World. Let's go Cremis. But I like how ordinary it looks. It's literally a normal type. Overall though, outside of very specific gimmick contexts, you should evolve Eevee as soon as possible. I thought the anime episode about the Eeveelution brothers peer pressuring their youngest sibling to walk the path that they had chosen. I think the end moral ended up being that no, Eevee, you're just fine the way you are. Get real. Incoming truth nuke that is gonna cause this to evolve into one of the zillion fan poison type Eeveelutions. Maybe you're not okay in your current form. Maybe you do need to improve. Maybe you're not actually the way you should be. Maybe Dare I say it, in this current climate. Maybe you're not valid. Get real and grow up. Can't just play pretend forever. Ignore the fact that I'm wearing an Eevee costume. First actual Eeveelution. It's Vaporeon. Let's apply that water stone.
The tides swell and the oceans churn. Evolve to
Showers. Showers, unfortunately, never going to be added to Smash. We know that Smash players never true combo water into soap. Vaporeon, the Bubble Jet Pokemon. Abilities are baseline, Water Absorb. When you get hit by a water move, instead of taking damage, you actually heal 25% of your HP, and you have a lot of HP, so you actually get a lot of healing. Hidden ability is Hydration, so if you are in rain, then your status condition gets cured at the end of each turn. This means you can do things like Rain Rest. Just fall asleep, and then the rain wakes you up from your nap. Keep the functionality of hydration in mind for when we talk about Leaf Guard later. I think I could use some hydration myself. First true Eeveelution, which means, hey, we get some real stats here. 130 HP. This is actually not shared by any other of the Eeveelutions. So this is the thickest Eeveelution confirmed. 65 attack is terrible, but you would never use physical attacks with this anyway. 60 defense is not great, but 130 HP is a really big buffer, and Vaporeon has a pseudo-signature move of Acid Armor, allowing it to gain +2 defense at the cost of a turn and a move slot. Is that worth it? Probably not. In Generation 1, Vaporeon had a unified special stat of 110, but this was split in Gen 2, and the 110 was actually retained in its special attack, even though Vaporeon is typically thought of as a bulky defensive Pokemon. 110 special attack is a lot. This thing hits really, really hard. It actually hits harder than Charizard. 95 special defense is actually pretty good, especially paired with that huge 130 HP buffer. So this is very, very bulky on special, and 65 speed is bad. In terms of moves, don't get your hopes up too high because it's an Eeveelution. You're gonna get water moves and you're gonna get water adjacent moves, which means ice moves. You do have 110 special attack, so you might actually consider Shadow Ballin' in the NBA. In terms of TMs and tutoring moves, there's not really anything notable here. Could potentially use this in a Baton Pass chain, but there are much better Eeveelutions at that. It is a bulky water, and of course that means you can scald things. If you can scald, you're probably not that bad, right? Please nerf this move. As a bulky water, Vaporeon really wishes it had some sort of direct self-healing, like Recover. That would be great. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Recover, but it does have Recovery. The entire Eeveelution line is part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Not only can Vaporeon wish, it can actually make somebody else's wish come true. With Flip Turn, in which case the 65 speed is actually kind of an upside, because you can make a wish, get hit, then Flip Turn, and have your partner's wish come true. That's actually pretty useful. Unfortunately, Vaporeon needs to get a life. No life do. Does get alluring voice. Kinda like a siren. Do you think that our modern use of the word siren, like a police siren, like a warning, actually has to do with the actual creature, the siren? I never thought about that. They've got to be related, right? Although Vaporeon is okay in-game, 110 special attack is a lot. You're probably not going to use it because one of the draws of the Eeveelutions is that they're very flexible, right? You can choose whichever Eeveelution fits your team the best, and that will actually almost never be Vaporeon. A strike against adding Vaporeon to your team is that water is a starter type. So if you picked the water starter, there's really no reason you would then also pick Vaporeon. And of course, Vaporeon is a water type, which is literally the most common type in the game. There's no drought when it comes to water-type options. So even though Vaporeon itself is actually quite strong, even among water types, you just have so many options. And this does apply to all of the Eeveelutions, but by picking one Eeveelution, you are not getting the other ones, right? There is that opportunity cost. I think this applies very strongly to Vaporeon because there are just so many options for a water-type Pokemon. And there are some very common water types, like, say, Magikarp and Gyarados, that are very easy to pick up and outclass Vaporeon, so I don't actually think you would use Vaporeon in-game, even though it's not bad. In terms of competitive viability, Vaporeon, again, quite solid, even though one of its gimmicks is melting into liquid. Bulky water is an archetype for a reason. Just being a water-type blob that sits there and is very difficult to flush down the drain, that's pretty useful. I think there's bulky waters that do it better than Vaporeon. More on that very soon. But Vaporeon is perfectly usable. I would say that it's viable. In terms of design, I think Vaporeon is okay. If you took Eevee to a vape shop, I think it would actually turn out looking very different than Vaporeon. I would say I do get amphibious vibes from Vaporeon. The idea of Eevee is that it's mutating to match its environment. So if you threw Eevee in a pool, put it in a real sink or swim situation, definitely looks like Vaporeon could swim. I like the gill frill. Anybody remember Gil from Kim Possible? Definitely not as cute as Vaporeon. But Vaporeon is a certified friend-shaped design. It's actually part of a water promotion program here in Japan. Look how official it looks. And even though we know that showers will never be in Smash, it somehow still managed to spam Nair because it lost all of its fur, right? It has this sleek, fishy sheen. We can end our Vaporeon review with a $5 microtransaction from Level 5 Vaporeon. A drink to that, boss. I've been watching every Pokemon game you've played and you've never used me ever. It's great. Don't talk about the copy pasta. Well, we won't. Cheers.
While wine vinegar doesn't actually hydrate you, in fact, in large amounts it can do the exact opposite, it does slake your thirst. In Roman history, it was always seen as a refreshing thing to drink.
Refreshed. Suicune. I guess that fire resist wasn't enough to save Vaporeon from the fire, because it died, and then it got that battle res from Ho-Oh. I think this is actually the first archetype tier list Pokemon we're talking about. That's technically a cover legendary. This is the mascot of Pokemon Crystal. And the special thing about that game is that one of Pokemon's zillion fancy water guys, like Wallace or Sigmund or Siegfried, whatever his name is totally obsessed with Suicune. You'd think he'd be obsessed with Vaporeon, right? Suicune, known in Japanese as Suicune. Sui is one of the readings of water, and kun in this context is like royalty. So it's like Prince of Water or Prince of Tides. Has the pressure ability, which normally is the same as having no ability, but for Suicune, you actually do get pressured, as we'll talk about. And as a hidden ability, you could get Inner Focus, which prevents being flinched, and it also prevents Intimidate, which doesn't really matter because you're not going to be using physical attacks. Base stat total of 580. So Ho-Oh's Resurrection recipe did give them a bit of a boost here. I thought Resurrection Sickness made you weaker. 100 HP, so actually some of the thickness got burnt off by the fire. 75 attack, who cares? 115 defense, that's pretty good. 90 special attack. So it also had some of its special attack evaporated. 90's not bad though. 115 special defense? And 85 speed, so it is a little bit swifter after burning off some of the bulk. Pretty obvious what you're supposed to do with Suicune, right? Mono Water, which is a very solid defensive type, and 100 HP, 115 defense, 115 special defense. That is some serious beef. Move pool is you know, not the greatest. It is based on an Eeveelution. You've got water moves. You've got ice moves. But very importantly, you've got Calm Mind. Any Crocoon fans here? Suicune's most infamous set, Crocoon. Calm Mind, Rest, Sleep Talk. Well, how do you kill things? Well, with your one attack, Surf. Crocoon has no weak. How can they allow this thing? Suicune's design is cool. We call them legendary beasts as kind of just a categorization. I think it's a spotted leopard? It's got that crystal crown on its forehead. Gotta put that on the cover. And it's got these flowing aurora ribbons. It's very, very elegant. And it can even walk on water. Who does he think he is? A shaman? That's the famous water walker, right? For in-game, Suicune isn't really that great. It's story-gated in crystal, but that's actually still better than the other legendary beasts. At least you're guaranteed to encounter Suicune. Not the greatest in-game for exactly the same reasons we mentioned with Vaporeon. You've got so many other water-type options that are easier to access and probably better. Suicune also does less damage than Vaporeon because it has less special attack, but it is faster. At a 95 base special attack Surf is probably still enough. It's just not something I would call exceptional. In terms of competitive, I would say that Suicune does the bulky water thing just better than Vaporeon overall, not strictly better. But Crocoon was a menace back in the day. Crocoon has no weak. Balanced disaster. Final placement for Suicune, the Prince of Water. I'm gonna say it's viable. We use the buddy system in the pool, okay? Safety first. You could use Flip Turn and arrange it this way. I think in Gen 2, Vaporeon was better because it was a growth unit. You could use growth on Vaporeon, whereas Suicune had no boosting option. But then as early as Gen 3, you got Calm Mind, the birth of Crocoon, and from then on, Suicune was definitely the better booster. And spoilers, both of these are actually better than booster. Jolteon, the most popular Eeveelution according to our ongoing straw poll. What's the forecast today?
The heavens roar, and the skies shatter. Evolve 2.
Thunders.
Thunderstruck. Jolteon, known in Japanese as
Sandasu.
not the kernel, and notably also not Zapdos. Zapdos is Sanda, not Sandasu. Alright? Don't get it wrong. Abilities are Volt Absorb, which is the electronic version of Water Absorb. If you get hit by an electric move, you don't take damage, instead you recover 25% of your HP. Quick Feet as a hidden ability is a little weird. So if you get statused, your feet become quick, and then you gain 50% speed. This also negates the speed drop of paralysis. This was only ever relevant for one generation because your feet could first quicken in Gen 5, and it was only in Gen 6 that all electric types gained an innate immunity to paralysis. But all that being said, Quick Feet is not very useful overall on Jolteon. Because you're already sprinting. No shock here. The 130 stat for Jolteon isn't its speed. Literally lightning quick here. 65 HP is very low, 65 attack is very low, so do not try and use physical attacks. 60 defense is horrible. So physical bulk is a joke. Unified special stat of 110 in Gen 1, but in the Gen 2 split, it got 110 special attack, which it really appreciates, and 95 special defense is fine. This combo of very high special attack with really good speed was definitely the selling point of Jolteon, especially in Gens 1 to 3 before the advent of Choice Scarf. Before any Pokemon could gain breakneck speed by accessorizing with a scarf, you used to be able to just know that you were going to be faster. There was no guesswork. I'd say Jolteon was even stronger in that environment. For moves, you get electric attacks. And I guess you're qualified to Shadow Ball it up in the NBA. Gets Double Kick, which you could theoretically use against the rock grounds that would wall you, but, like, come on. That's a last resort, right? Just switch out. It also gets Pin Missile, which pre-base power buff, you would basically never use. Maybe you would Pin Missile Executor. And now Pin Missile actually does have pretty good base power. But you have 65 attacks, so I wouldn't exactly follow Jolteon's Pinterest page. Upside of Pin Missile on Jolteon is that when you mention it, sometimes generous viewers also use Pin Missile. Thank you to Gundy Nepbait for the 10 gifted subs. Nice 10-hit Pin Missile. In terms of TM moves, I mean, you're an Eeveelution, right? You do have a very fast stab, fairly strong Volt Switch. So you could zip-zap between the battlefield and the bench with Volt Switch. And that's about it if you intend on actually attacking with Jolteon. Luckily for Jolteon, although it does have very narrow applications, it's certainly qualified for the roles it fulfills. It's very fast and fairly strong, which are traits that you really like for in-game. Although it basically only has electric attacks. If you're gonna be locked to only one type of attack, electric is pretty good for in-game because there's a zillion fish you can fry, and you can also make a lot of Kentucky Fried Pidgey. There also tend to be a lot of flying types. You are, of course, completely hopeless against ground types, but hey, you have 5 other Pokemon, right? Electric types aren't that common, it's not a starter type. So Jolteon is an option you might actually consider. It's way better than Pikachu, lol. I would be remiss not to mention that Jolteon kind of struggles to actually access Thunderbolt in-game in many of its runs, but it is a very good user of the Thunderbolt TM. And 110 special attack is pretty good. You can make do with, like, Shockwave and Discharge. It doesn't affect the rating, but I do want to mention that Jolteon is by far the best Eeveelution in Super Eevee Edition, a game all about the Eeveelutions. Because Jolteon has crazy speed, it gets more actions because speed is what affects the rate at which you get turns. So Jolteon's wild speed means that you get double or triple the actions of the other Eeveelutions. It's crazy. And not only is Jolteon itself a competent attacker, but a turn also lets you use items and other meta support factors, so Jolteon is just the best by a lot. Who's the best Eeveelution for Conquest? It might actually be Jolteon as well. Jolteon is also pretty good in Conquest, a game where Eevee is your starter. Best Conquest Eeveelution is probably either Jolteon or Vaporeon. Vaporeon's also really good because it gets Hydro Pump. Back to mainline games, but another aspect of it, competitive. Jolteon's actually pretty good in competitive as well. In Gen 1, even though it had a really sick crit rate of just about 25%, it's mostly outclassed by Zapdos. But from Gens 2 to 5, I think it was actually OU or BL, like, really good. Jolteon gets a lot of competitive mileage out of the fact that it's a really fast support Pokemon. You have access to quite a few stat boosting moves, growth in Gen 2, but you can also agility, and you can give those boosts to someone else with Baton Pass. And your 110 special attack doesn't go to waste, even though it's primarily a support Pokemon. That's 110 special attack stab Thunderbolt. You can't just ignore that. Baton Pass nerf has significantly hurt Jolteon, but back when you could actually touch the baton, Jolteon was one of the best at it. Where does lightning strike? The highest tier.
Victory!
Hooray. Jolteon definitely buoyed by its past performance in an environment that no longer exists in the modern games. You could say that its successes were lightning in a bottle. Or maybe that lightning was in a stone that you then rubbed on your Eevee to forcefully mutate it. Design-wise, I'm gonna say that Jolteon is my personal favorite. I really like how it looks like an Eevee that actually just got struck by a lightning bolt. And then maybe its fur sort of flared up and it just froze that way. I also like how its visual design does actually have gameplay implications. The reason why this thing has access to Pin Missile, even though it wouldn't really use it, is that it is so spiky. Even though Jolteon has kind of a hostile, prickly design, a majority of the viewers agree it is in fact friend-shaped. So pokey, is that why they call it a Pokemon? But if Jolteon were real, this is probably one that you don't want to touch, right? You'll probably just impale yourself. Is that what they meant by stab damage? Maybe he's using Lightning Spear, high faith. And even if you're careful, you're probably gonna end up giving yourself a little static shock, right? Oh! They say that lightning doesn't strike twice, but it definitely strikes at least once, specifically on the Tin Tower, which then burns down and kills your Jolteon. But it's not all bad news. Might get resurrected as Raikou. Raikou, the Thunder Pokemon. Very creative. Known in Japanese as Raikou. So Rai means thunder, and Ko in this case is an honorific, so this is the Thunder Lord. It's the same thunder that's in Raichu. It's also in, I think, both the Metal Gear and Mortal Kombat characters, Raiden. Den also means electricity, so Raiden's name is like Electric. It's like Mario. There's also a Raiden in King of Fighters. They need to get some new names. What? Okay, apparently there's also a Raiden in Genshin Impact, but I don't play mobile slop, so I've never heard of them. Is the official pronunciation of the Mortal Kombat character Raiden? That's just wrong. It's definitely Raiden. I know the real pronunciation. That's how you know that we're not sponsored by Raycon. Apparently the Japanese name of Raging Bolt the Paradox form is Takeru Daiko? It's the Raging Thunderclap. The dragon type being made it outrageous. We're not talking about the paradoxes, by the way, because, well, two reasons. One, I don't really know that much about them, so I can't really speak about them. And also, I just don't like them, so perhaps a bit unfair, but that's why they're not actually on the list. What's Walking Wake's name? I guess we can at least mention the paradox names at least. So here's Walking Wake. It's Uneru Minamo, which is a rippling water's surface. So Walking Wake is a pretty good translation of that. Although personally I prefer the Crasher Wake. Alright, back to Raikou, right? Once again we can see that Ho-Oh's res spell gives you a stat buff. He really is Phoenix. What is Bahamut gonna do? The bulk buffs for Raikou are actually massive. We go up to 90 HP, who cares about 85 attack? And 75 defense, so it's no longer a complete toothpick in terms of physical durability. You can actually take a hit. You do gain a slight amount of charge. You get 5 more special attack and 5 more special defense, but you are encumbered by that extra bulk. You do lose 15 points of speed, so you're definitely slower, but 115 is still quite fast. Raikou does not have as many support options as Jolteon does, but it is significantly better at just mauling the opponent to death, because it has some extra tricks that let it do that. Despite the fact that it got slower, it is actually extremely speedy. You can get extreme speed. In Gens 4 to 5, there's actually a special event Raikou that, as the kids would say, was farming aura, because it actually had Aura Sphere, which Jolteon would love. Unfortunately, the price of cultivating aura back in the day was you did develop a rash. The Raikou was locked to the rash nature, which is plus special attack, minus special defense, watch out. The downside of that was that it wasn't plus speed, and you probably wanted to be running plus speed. Nowadays, this doesn't matter, because even if you have the Gen 4 to 5 event Raikou, you can just treat the rash with an herbal remedy. Just use a nature herb to completely change your personality. That's not creepy at all. Get a different nature that's actually plus speed. Or you know what? You can just download Aura off the internet, because you can just use the Aura Sphere TM. Not sponsored by Aura, by the way. Apparently, you can use electrolysis? Thunderlord PRF. Why does this thing get scald? Although Raikou doesn't quite have the lightning legs support options of Jolteon, unlike Jolteon, who runs away and makes its teammates fight, Raikou itself kills you. The extra bulk is actually very relevant, especially when it comes to using Calm Mind for some extra charge before he starts zapping you into the Shadow Realm. Raikou actually a very legit competitive force, especially in the earlier generations, when you had fewer options. And the nightmare of trying to actually track down Raikou, as it either runs away or forces you to run away with Roar, some of that trauma it actually carries into competitive, because in Gen 2, it actually roar out Snorlax. I would say that in-game, I would probably rather have Raikou than Jolteon, because 115 speed is actually still fast enough to outspeed everything, and you have more coverage, which is what you really care about. Unfortunately, you're not actually getting Raikou in your game. It's a legendary, so it's much harder to actually access, and the Gen 2 roaming legendaries are maybe the most obnoxious catches in the entire series. So although theoretically, as early as the Burn Tower event, you could lottery luck your way into a level 40 Raikou that then destroys the rest of the game, that's not happening. So Raikou basically does not exist in-game, even though it would actually be very useful there. There is one game where the legendary beasts are all guaranteed, Pokemon Colosseum, and although Raikou is by far the best of the legendary beasts in that game, it's also the latest. By the time you actually access the Thunderlord, there's like 5 story battles remaining, or close to that. You only have Realgam Colosseum left, which is a couple story battles and then the final gauntlet. I think Raikou is very good, but unfortunately on the basis of how obnoxious it is to access in-game, I can't quite say it scores an E victory, so we're not quite going to be having a complete circuit here. But I think we can say it is definitely E viable. It's really good. In terms of design, Raikou is maybe my least favorite of the legendary beasts. I think it's okay. This specific beast type is a saber-toothed tiger, right? It's got those fierce fangs. And I like the jagged lightning tail, but I'd say I definitely prefer the thunderstruck aesthetic of Jolteon. I would say that Raikou does do a better job of appearing like a natural electric type, and not just one that had to adaptively mutate into one. It's kind of neat that its mane sort of looks like a thundercloud. The final of the OG Eeveelution trio. It's Flareon.
The embers of hope shall never fade. Evolve to
Booster.
Would the kids describe Flareon as lit? Flareon, the flame Pokemon. Known in Japanese as Booster. Abilities are Flash Fire, so if you get hit by a Fire-type move, you take no damage, and your Fire-type moves then gain a 50% boost. This is probably worse than just gaining an attack or a special attack boost, because it only applies to your Fire moves. But it's not bad. As a hidden ability, it's got Guts. Now, Guts actually is a very good ability. It ups attack when suffering, which in English means that if you get a status condition, you then gain 50% more attack. Most Guts Pokemon actually want to status themselves for 2 reasons. 1, you actually get to take advantage of the Guts boost, but 2, if you're statused, you can't be statused by something else. So you want to purposefully inflict yourself with either poison through the toxic orb or burn through the flame orb. You can go ahead and burn yourself if you're gutsy, because Guts actually negates the attack drop from burn. It used to be an actual choice between toxic orb and flame orb, because Burn used to deal 12.5% of your health a turn, whereas Toxic did 6%, then 12%, then 18%. This meant that if you were in there for more than 3 turns, which was the breakpoint between the burn or toxic damage, you would want to use the Flame Orb. But if you intended to stay in for 3 turns or less, you would then use the Toxic Orb. But in modern times, burn damage has actually been nerfed. Burn damage is now a constant 6%, which means that for Guts Pokemon, you always want to use the Flame Orb. Unless you're a fire type that's immune to burn. Here's Booster's stats, and in Gen 1 in particular, they were actually pretty good. 65 HP is bad, but 130 attack is massive. The highest in the game was Dragonite at 134, but 130 is actually tied for second highest with Machamp. This furball's got some fire in its heart, okay? It hits hard. 60 defense sucks. In Gen 1, with the unified special stat, it had 110 special with the Gen 2 special split. Even though fire has always been a hyper offense type, for some reason, we got 95 special attack and we got 110 special defense.
Your magic shall not save you.
And despite being named Booster, 65 speed is horrendous. To put it in context how good these stats would be in Gen 1, 130 attack, 110 special defense, that's strictly better than Gyarados. You know, the famously overpowered Pokemon? That's 5 more attack, 10 more special, then Gyarados. Flareon is better than Gyarados, guys! Of course, there is far more to a Pokemon than just their stats. In Generation 1, Fire is actually a really bad type. It gets a lot better later on. But of course, the fatal flaw with Flareon that everyone mocks. Flareon has no moves. Even though they added Flare Blitz as a physical fire option with the physical special split in Gen 4, Flareon had to Fire Fang it up until Gen 6 when they finally gave it Flare Blitz, which it's not particularly good at using because it has 65 HP. So it kills itself about as fast as it kills you. Outside of your fire attacking option, what do you get? Nothing. Nothing! How poetic is it that it gets Stab on Burning Jealousy? One of the things that makes Flareon so tragic is that it's so close to being so much better. Could you imagine 130 attack, 110 special attack, 95 speed? If you remixed its stats that way, you would basically get Undercooked Blaziken. Now, raw chicken is a bit dangerous, but it's not fatal. In Japan, we do actually eat chicken that's a little bit rare in the center. We call it chicken tataki. Booster is a fire type, and he even has flash fire, so he's not going to be affected by my hot take here. I'm going to be brutally honest. I think that Flareon is overhated and underrated. Yeah, it should have 110 special attack instead of 95, but 95 special attack is fine. For context, a 95 special attack Fire Blast, that's actually stronger than a Nidoking Earthquake before Nidoking got its attack buff. And nobody was calling a Nidoking Earthquake weak, and yet people were making fun of Flareon because it can't use its better attacking stat for fire, even though it was fine. And I think this means a lot coming from me, somebody who repeats jokes non-stop until we've got the maximum stale moves penalty, and also as somebody who belabors points well past the point that Ponyta has passed into Ghost Terra typing. The joke about Flareon having no moves? Let it go. It's had Flare Blitz since Gen 6. 12 years ago. Flareon has been fine for longer than most of the kids complaining about it have been alive. I don't think Flareon is that bad. The reason why Flareon is subject to such insane scrutiny is because it's a member of the illustrious Eeveelution bloodline. In this family, we expect everyone to be a winner, and Flareon is the only one that doesn't benefit from this insane Eevee nepotism that affects all of the other Eeveelutions. It's sort of become Flareon's identity that it's the target of mockery, even though it's really not that bad. When you deny Flareon the same privileges that have been unfairly afforded to the rest of its family, can you really blame it when it maybe tries to strike out on its own and make its own name in the world?
Hey you, trainer! Has this ever happened to you? Your friends are all enjoying modern gaming while you're stuck in the past, grinding the finest teammates the game has to offer. There's got to be a better way. Great news, trainers! Hi, my name's Boosta. You may remember me as the false prophet, but hear me out. There's nothing false about my next promise to you, but it'll certainly be profitable. Introducing Booster's Tower, a premium level boosting service available for a limited time only. Why should you boost? Our services at Booster's Tower are fast, friendly, reliable, and safe. Stop grinding and start playing. So what are you waiting for? Climb Booster's Tower today with the number on your screen. 1-800-BOOSTA. That's 1-800-BOOSTA. But that's not all. If you boost within the next 30 minutes, we'll throw in 2 booster packs absolutely free. Don't delay. Call today. 1-800-BOOSTA. For when you need the boost to get through.
To all the Flareon haters out there, why do you hate small business owners? They're the backbone of the economy.
All that being said, I don't think Flareon is that good. I would say that it's vile. You could definitely do way worse than Flareon. Would you use it in-game? Probably not. It does share a typing with the starters, so if you picked your fire starter, you're definitely not gonna boost. But unlike Vaporeon, who has a zillion alternatives, fire types are actually quite rare. So if you wanted a fire type, you might actually use the boost to get through. And with 130 base attack, even in the generations where you don't have fire type stab, you can just use random physical moves and do a zillion damage. 130 attack is a lot. And 95 special attack is still fine. In terms of competitive, the flame does not burn bright. This thing has never been good. Way too slow, way too frail. But even with all of its flaws, I think I would still put Flareon probably in the upper 50% of Pokemon. Now that's largely because a lot of Pokemon are just unusably horrible. But I really do think that Flareon is overrated and underrated. Even though it's still not that good. For design, I'm definitely a member of the Booster Club. I think Booster Club is a term. I've been mocking the phrase shaped like a friend, but I would definitely say that Booster is shaped like a friend. If you were to buy an Eeveelution chair or something that you could hug, you gotta go with Booster, right? This thing is so huggable. You might even use G-Max Cuddle on it. Ho yo! An easy E-Victory placement in terms of the fluff factor. In fact, almost all of the Eeveelutions have some pretty severe balding, right? They sacrifice all of their hair as part of their Eeveelution Ascension. It's only Flareon that gets even fluffier. Believe it or not, they took some shortcuts when constructing Booster's tower. Turns out it wasn't exactly up to fire codes, so it burned down. And even though Flareon has Flash Fire, it somehow died. I guess it was crushed by the rubble. I would say like a phoenix rising from the ashes, we got Entei, but the phoenix was Ho-Oh. So maybe they just left us with the ashes. Entei. Entei, the volcano Pokemon, known in Japanese as Entei. So N is fire or blaze, and Tei is actually the honorific of emperor, so it's the Flame Emperor. This is not only a title claimed by the Pokemon Entei, but it actually appears in other media as well. If you play Fire Emblem Three Houses, in Japanese, they keep talking about Entei, the Flame Emperor.
お前が噂の園庭か。な。
お主には煩わしかったか、園庭よ。
やっと見つけた。今を逃せば機会はない。ネズミか。
It makes the dialogue really funny. For the paradox form here, gouging fire, we've got Ugatsu Homura! Homura from Smash! Homura is Pyra's Japanese name. I'm guessing Ugatsu is gouge. I feel like you'd get incapacitated for more than 5 seconds if you got gouged by this thing, though. All three legendary beasts share the exact same ability and hidden ability. It's kind of lazy. They all have pressure as their standard ability. This is completely useless on Entei because Entei's probably not going to be sticking around very long. But it's actually kind of useful on Raikou, and it's really useful on Suicune because Crokune has no weak. So the fact that you're actually burning twice the PP does actually eventually run you out of options against Suicune. Inner Focus doesn't really do anything. Entei probably gets the most use out of Inner Focus out of the three beasts. Not because of the flinch protection, but because of the intimidate protection, and Entei is actually a physical attacker. The Phoenix's Flame did impart a stat boost. The 115 HP is a pretty big buff. It's an important buffer against the recoil of Flare Blitz, but as we'll discuss soon, you actually don't really use that move on Entei, even though it's something that Flareon lusted over for 2 generations. 115 attack is actually 15 less than Flareon, so you did go a bit catabolic in the blaze. 85 defense is fine. 90 special attack is fine, although you're not going to be using special attacks. 75 special defense, oh no, it's my lowest stat! And 100 speed, although not impressive on its own, is a huge boost from the Flareon form. I would say 100 speed is usable, whereas 65 is definitely not. When it comes to the moveset, you're an Eeveelution adjacent, so I hope you like fire moves. Could do some Scarfed Eruption Cheese, maybe try and Nestle Crunch it up, and the TMs aren't that much better. Bulldoze? Dig? Oh, you can go on a stomping tantrum. Yikes. Luckily for Entei, when it was touched by the Phoenix Flame, not only did its stats change, but it's the only Eeveelution compatible with the Ho-Oh Holy Blood. An ancient genetic memory was awakened. It's literally a holy weapon, Sacred Fire. Seinaru Hono, the Sacred Flame. This thing may as well be Volflame. This is one of the best moves in the franchise. 100 base power. 95 accuracy, very pinpoint balancing here, don't want to make it too powerful. Physical fire move. Sacred Fire inflicts damage with a 50% chance of burning the target. Wow. I mean, it's no Sizzly Slide. But do you want proof of the Flame Emperor's divine lineage? Here it is. One of the only Pokemon in the game that can wield the Sacred Fire. The Flame Emperor, like many of his ilk throughout history, lived a sequestered life away from the public, in his cloister. Not the water type, because he'd be weak to that. I'm saying that it's kind of hard to get this thing in-game. one of the roaming legendaries, super obnoxious. But in Pokemon Coliseum, it's actually the first of the beasts that you can obtain, so you might actually get some use out of it there. You can also just immediately give it a Fire Blast TM. I'm not sure I would kneel in deference to the Flame Emperor, but I think we can at least say that it reaches the heights of Vile. Sacred Fire is completely bonkers. It makes Scald look bad. Scald. One of the most broken moves in the franchise. It's just bad Sacred Fire. Issue is that you need to be of the Flame Emperor lineage to actually wield Sacred Fire, which means you have to use Entei. It is probably not worth it. I wouldn't say it's a complete joke in competitive, especially after obtaining the Sacred Fire Holy Weapon, but it is a far cry from the upper echelons occupied by the other legendary beasts. The other legendary beasts were legit good. Entei is just okay. The Flame Empire barely even expands its reach to the lower tiers. Some final nice things to say about Entei. It probably has my favorite design of the legendary beast. I really like that its flowing mane is a lot like a smoke cloud, billowing out of a volcano. And for some reason, it was the main character of the best Pokemon movie, Pokemon the third movie, Mystery of the Unknown? I think it had a completely different Japanese name. I think it was the Crystal Tower. It turns out it wasn't really mysterious. The Unknown just cast a spell. Japanese name is, oh my god. Japanese version is pretty intense here. Gekijoban Pocket Monster. Suisho to no Ko-o. Silver screen debut Pocket Monster. Lord of the Crystal Tower. The Crystal Exarch, turns out he's also a Final Fantasy character. Why was the Entei in that movie so powerful? Well, because it was total fanfic. It wasn't an Entei at all. Most famous line from that movie would be, "If that is what you wish."
If that is what you wish.
But unfortunately, the Eeveelution Entei was just an illusion. If we see beyond the volcanic smoke and mirrors, and meet up with Entei here in reality, the line is a bit different. Eeveelution Entei? You wish. Now I'm just a plain, normal Eevee, but I'm gonna use Future Sight here. What's the next Eeveelution we're gonna rank?
It takes a high IQ to comprehend my true power. Evolve 2.
Effie.
It's Effie! Even though we're filming this video from Pokemon Prison, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's Effie. And also, Effie literally is a Fire Emblem character. Although she's definitely not a psychic type, she's the opposite. She's a physical knight.
This wasn't actually planned, but while I was passing through here... You like Espeon? You like Eeveelutions?
Espeon! The Sun Pokemon. Abilities are synchronized. If you get status, it then inflicts the same status back on your opponent. Not particularly useful, especially when compared to Magic Bounce. Magic Bounce, top 5 ability in the franchise? Insanely broken. Magic Bounce is like equipping the Mirror Shield. Maybe Effie really is Effie. If an enemy uses a non-damaging move against you, not only does it not affect you, it gets bounced back to them. This doesn't take you an action like it would with the actual move Magic Coat. It's just a passive aura that surrounds Espeon. It uses its psychic powers to just redirect your own effects back at you. Probably better than Magic Guard, because a lot of the effects mitigated by Magic Guard, they just don't even affect you because they're never applied to you. They're applied back to your opponent. Absolutely bonkers. In terms of stats, Espeon is great value Alakazam. Same glass cannon spread, fewer stats per serving. HP, attack, and defense are all absolutely pathetic. So this is the least physically capable Eeveelution, which is kind of ironic because Espeon is all about sports, right? This thing has read all of the books though. 130 special attack is crazy. I guess I'll take 95 special defense. And 110 speed is really, really good. In terms of in-game, this is probably more useful than Jolteon's spread of 110 special attack, 130 speed, because the 130 speed is kind of overkill, and you actually do appreciate the extra power of 130 special attack. Despite describing this as great value Alakazam is really, really good. So even the great value version is definitely worth a purchase. Despite its huge brain, Espeon has a PhD in psychic phenomena and nothing else. I hope you like psychic attacks. Be sure to check out Shadow Ball coverage on Espeon. Dazzling Gleam, Grass Knot, Power Gem. This is like okay, but keep in mind that this is as good as it gets. Back in the day, it didn't even have these sad options. It had nothing. When it comes to in-game, I think Espeon is overall the best by quite a lot. It's not a starter type, and psychic types aren't super common, so you would maybe take a daylight stroll with your Eevee to acquire Espeon. It's got really, really good stats, the best stats for in-game out of any of the Eeveelutions. You want to hit hard and fast, and no Eeveelution does that better than Espeon. What really makes Espeon, in my opinion, the definitive best Eeveelution for in-game, I might even go so far as to say it has the best performance of any starter ever, would be using Espeon as your starter in XD. Now, it's the best Pokemon in Colosseum, where it's a duo starter with Umbreon who's useless. So Espeon's gotta do all the heavy lifting. But Espeon in XD is basically Pokemon Sigurd. It is so unfair. You have to do, I think, one story battle with unevolved Eevee. Then you get access to your promotion item, the Sun Shard. Couldn't be the Sun Stone, because we gotta make it extra confusing. Your Eevee already loves you because you're not an edgelord protagonist anymore, you're just a little kid. You apply the Sun Shard, and congratulations. 130 special attack, 110 speed. These are basically end-game ready stats. You could face the Elite Four with those, except you're not fighting the Elite Four, you're fighting Lediba. Better than Final Form starter stats. Instantly, at the beginning of the game. I don't think any other starter in the series has an advantage that big. In terms of competitive, even though Espeon has really good offensive stats, Psychic is kinda bad. Can't affect dark types at all, and you get annihilated by U-turn, which is everywhere. And back when Pursuit existed, they would pursue you. So your fate was sealed if you were ever against a dark type. Luckily, you don't actually have to attack with Espeon, because you're a magician. Magic Bounce is totally busted. You can switch into an incoming status move and basically use it for yourself in addition to getting Espeon onto the field. And it's just a subset of the insane functionality of Magic Bounce. But if you use Espeon as part of a baton pass chain, well, all of the phasing moves that could disrupt your chain, well, those get bounced too! However, unlike Jolteon, who was immediately a baton pass superstar, Espeon did actually need to bide its time and study up on how to actually cast Magic Bounce. But once it actually learned the ability, wow, bannably broken. And just like with Jolteon, even though Magic Bounce Baton Pass Espeon is focused on cheesy support strategies, it still has 130 special attack. You can't just ignore it because it could just kill you. All of this high praise, I think we can award Espeon
Victory!
It might actually be better than Jolteon, just because of the Ore games. A definitive E-victory. Espeon ratings are on the rise. Usually has very good in-game performance, either A or S, and in XD in particular, it's actual Sigurd status. There's nothing your opponents can do. The most ahead of the power curve starter in the entire franchise. For design, Espeon is the first Eeveelution I'd describe as a little creepy. Often its mouth is not really visible, which reminds me of that horror story, I have no mouth, but I must scream. But I think that's intentional because Espeon doesn't really need to speak, right? It's got telekinetic powers. It's got the wiggly forked tail. It's got the psychic gem in the center of its head, kind of like a third eye. I think it does a really good job of conveying that it is a psychic type, while you can still see the echoes of the Eevee that it once was, before its third eye awakened. Of course it's a psychic type, it's pink. I guess so, yes, also it's pink. I'm not really sure why the psychic type is associated with the color pink. If you associate psychic with magic, you use mana, and mana is usually blue, but that has to go to water, so you could say that it's pink because they're very brainy. And of course they had that show, Pinky and the Brain. Maybe purple would be a more fitting color for psychic, but there's already a lot of types clamoring for that purple design space. We got poison, it's purple because it's kind of icky. Ghosts are kind of purpley and spectral. And dragons have this really regal deep purple. I would say that psychic types look pretty in pink. And hey, another of my favorite classes is associated with the color pink.
I will bring honor to my father and my kingdom.
Forget about shaped like a friend. Espeon is shaped like a pal. A din. Warcraft paladins are pink for some reason. Paladins, of course, are good guys, but even the most virtuous among us can go bad.
The sun sets and a hero rises. Evolve 2.
Buraki.
I gotta get rid of this overlay, hang on. I'm stuck in the Dark Knight class. Ah, here we go. It's the other Gen 2 Eeveelution, Buraki. Let's go ahead and explain this now. So it's black and lucky, so Buraki. Umbreon, the Moonlight Pokemon. Same synchronize ability as Espeon, probably gets more use out of this than Espeon does because Umbreon is a defensive Pokemon. One of the ways you can get through defensive Pokemon is to inflict them with debilitating status like Toxic. But if you shout mean things at Umbreon in the COD lobby, he says the same things back to you. So it's just toxic all around. Inner Focus makes you immune to flinching, so if you use Umbreon in doubles, which it does see use in, you'd probably want to go with Inner Focus to avoid getting faked out. Stats for Buraki here. 95 HP, that's actually pretty good. 65 attack is terrible. Ooh, 110 defense, hey, that's kind of a lot.
Break yourselves upon my body.
60 special attack is also awful. Oh, highest stat? Special defense at 130.
Your magic shall not save you.
And 65 speed is terrible. With these stats, you can forget about ever going on the offensive. You can consider yourself Buraki to get like a 4-hit KO. Forget about attacking. At least with your own attack stat. Things aren't all gloom and doom for Umbreon though. This defensive stat spread, 95 HP, 110 defense, 130 special defense, this is one of the best in the game. Almost always, defensive Pokemon are deficient in one of these three, to give them sort of a chink in their armor that you can try and target. But Umbreon on defense is very, very difficult to break through, because it actually has a pretty good HP base, it has a good defense base, it has a really good special defense base, and there's no quad weakness because it's a monotype. You can count on Umbreon to hold the line. Give them nothing. Maybe give them the badly poisoned status, at least in the generations where Umbreon actually learned Toxic. I think it was originally supposed to be a poison type. Could you imagine if this thing was actually Poison Dark? It would make Drapion and Alolan Muck look like chumps. Alolan Muck actually goes pretty hard, even though it's very soft and goopy. Poison Dark Umbreon would be immortal, because one of the main counters to Umbreon is to Toxic it, since it itself is not a poison type. despite being a denizen of the dark. Umbreon does actually have a light magic rank because, wow, it can actually heal itself with Moonlight. So you have reliable recovery with this defensive profile. If there ever is a Ghost-type Eeveelution, we know that it wasn't an Umbreon that died. This thing is very, very durable. In addition to being able to Holy Light itself, Umbreon is also a member of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, so you could also Wish Pass, which does work because Umbreon is quite slow. A nice additional perk of being a devious dark type is that you can't be pranked. If a prankster Pokemon tries to goad you on with a taunt, prankster moves against dark types don't just lose priority, they completely fizzle. They don't work at all. Oh, it's just a prank, bro. Too late. They're about to take a walloping. But I thought Umbreon only had 65 attack. Turns out bad attack doesn't matter when you just cheat. Stab foul play is absolutely disgusting. It definitely feels as unfair as a dark type move should. Even Pokemon with a mediocre attack stat get completely obliterated when you turn that attack stat back on them with a 95 base power stab option. In a way, Umbreon is the only one who's able to cheat the Eeveelution stat spread because it doesn't really have 65 attack, it has whatever its opponent's attack is, which is probably going to be higher than 65. And you can just fill your other 3 move slots with powerful support options. Unfortunately, some Dark Clouds may be hampering your Moonlight recovery, even though Dark Cloud was a good game. We haven't talked about Umbreon in-game yet, but even though it's not a poison type, it is trash. The only thing that Umbreon offers is defensive utility, which for your in-game playthrough is completely useless. So it's unfortunately disqualified from E-Victory because you would never ever use this thing in-game. Even in Pokemon Coliseum, where you're handed Umbreon for free, even though it's pitch black, it's more of a white elephant. You want to box that Umbreon ASAP because all it's doing is sucking the EXP out of a much better partner for Espeon. Oh, but Umbreon could draw fire for your partner in a double battle. Here's an idea. How about you have 2 offensive partners that kill both of the enemies, then nobody takes any damage? Ooh. The targeting AI of Coliseum also always targets the Pokemon that takes more damage, so because Umbreon doesn't actually have any sort of taunt effect, it just kind of sits there on the field doing nothing in Coliseum, so it's a very, very bad choice. Caveat to Umbreon being a complete dud in-game is that if you're doing some sort of challenge run like a Nuzlocke, where safety is very valued, it doesn't get much safer than 90, 110, 130 bulk, right? You might actually walk the dark path with your Eevee if you're doing a Nuzlocke. Dark Knight is a tank class. But that's all of the bad news for Buraki. It's pretty legit in competitive. Decent support move pool, very, very hard to kill. I think it's only a good dual typing away from actually being a meta staple. Unfortunately, pure dark as a defensive typing, not the greatest. Really wishes that it could pull some pranks of its own. If it had either or both of Prankster or a really good defensive secondary typing, like Steel or Poison, I think that Buraki might have what it takes to actually be like a metagame superstar. As is, even in competitive, I would have to say that Buraki is only viable. For design, Dark Knight is my favorite FF14 class, and Umbreon doesn't actually equip armor like this in the games, but I still like Umbreon. Unfortunately, the best part of Umbreon's design is kind of lost due to the crap factor of the modern Pokemon games. But if you play one of the actually good-looking Pokemon games, like the N64 ones that somehow look better than 3 console generations later, Umbreon's design literally gets a chance to shine. If you're a Sonic fan, and I have to imagine there's immense crossover between Sonic fans and Eeveelution fans because they're both the most obnoxious groups on the internet, Umbreon collects all the rings. The golden rings on its body actually have an undulating glow. It's kind of hypnotic. Really, really cool, and that's something that's just completely absent from the modern games. Imagine being in a dark room, and then suddenly, the glowing Umbreon rings. Are you in trouble? Probably not, because Umbreon has 65 attack. And Umbreon also probably loves you because it evolved through friendship. Unfortunately, doesn't appear to be friends with Professor Oak. Have you eaten your greens today? One of the things I realized after becoming an adult, I know I'm dressed like this, but I'm 31. And speaking of 31, as an adult, I guess I could just eat ice cream every single day. And I thought that's what I would do when I was a kid, but I actually don't even want to do that. I actually choose to eat vegetables. There's actually a restaurant near me called King of Kale, and I will willingly leave my house and go buy a salad. This is something I never thought I would do, but sometimes it's actually the highlight of my day.
Did you think I was kidding about the salad? Well, here it is. Rare footage of an adult willingly eating vegetables. It's delicious. And it tastes even better now that it's on camera and officially a tax deduction. These salads are serious business. Look at the weaponry you have to use. It's absolutely huge. How much speed do you think I lose from this thing? Oh. Well, it's not quite instant death, but it's pretty close.
I say this because I want you guys to know that I actually like vegetables IRL. Alright, let's talk about Leafeon.
The forest fights back. Evolve 2.
Leafeon.
Advice to the kids out there. Eat your veggies, but Leafeon is a character in a video game. Don't play with your food. Leafeon, the Verdant Pokemon. Well, I never played Verdant Winds, and this thing is weak to flying anyway. Abilities are Leaf Guard. What Leaf Guard does is it blocks incoming status if it's sunny. Of course, if you're already status, then Leaf Guard does nothing. Remember hydration? Hydration cured status in rain. So if you were already status, you could purge it off, but it also effectively purged incoming status because it would just get healed at the end of the turn anyway. So Leaf Guard is just a way worse version of hydration, and it doesn't combo with rest the same way either. Hidden ability Chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is actually quite a good ability. It doubles your speed in Sunshine. So all you need to really take advantage of this is the stat spread and moves to do so. Do you think that Leafeon has the stat spread and moves to take advantage of this powerful sweeping ability? Well, stats-wise, almost. This stat spread is actually kind of good. 65 HP is bad. 110 attack, that's actually pretty good. 130 defense is really good, although you're a grass type, so you take double damage from a bunch of stuff. 60 special attack is terrible, but your off-attacking stat being a dump stat is totally fine. 65 special defense is bad, so this thing gets incinerated by any sort of special pressure. 95 speed is actually very good, especially when doubled by Chlorophyll. A lot of the Swift Swimmers and Chlorophyll Pokemon are actually naturally very slow, so even when you double their speed, they're still at risk of being outpaced by Choice Scarfers. But Leafeon, under the sunlight, is blazing fast. With 95 speed, there's actually a decent chance of getting the first strike, and if it's sunny, you are definitely getting the first strike. So Leafeon goes first. And then what? All of the Eeveelutions have lackluster move pools. The harsh sunlight completely evaporated this one. There's not even a move puddle. This is unacceptable. I hope you like Razor Leaf on Evo and level 50 Leaf Blade, because that is all you're getting. Leaf Blade's got a high crit rate. This is a critical crop failure. I hope you've got some grains in reserve, because we're not eating anything this year. At the time of recording, this is actually very topical because the rice prices in Japan are insane. It's actually not because of a shortage of rice crop. It's basically all market manipulation by one major entity that controls the rice supply. Shouldn't that be illegal? The rice people make the laws, so no, it's not. To give you an idea of how bad the rice prices are, by the way, it's actually cheaper to buy imported rice from America. In Japan. It's not really Leafeon's fault, but it is grass-type adjacent news, so I'm gonna complain about it here. Here's the TMs. If you thought there was anything worth using here, sorry to disappoint you, no, not the case. The best thing you can do is pop in Boktai, put the power of the sun in your hand, and start solar blading things. Set your solar blade on stab, and hope that it's not resisted, but it probably is. Boktai, more like bok choy. Can we make a salad out of this thing? Get any sort of value? Caesar was killed by blades as well. He was a very famous salad. I don't think Leafeon quite lives up to that legacy, though. And besides, the throne is already occupied by the Flame Emperor. Leafeon isn't even in the line of succession. Success is the last word I would use to describe Leafeon. Despite the actually pretty reasonable stat spread, Leafeon is almost entirely killed by, I guess I'll say, the worst monotype of any of the Eeveelutions on the list. Yes, worse than Glaceon. Grass is very underwhelming on defense as a monotype, and it is hopeless on offense. You would never use this in-game. Grass is one of the starter types, so anybody who actually thinks grass is a good type, they're just gonna pick the grass starter, which means they're not gonna be picking Leafeon. And grass is pretty terrible in-game anyway, so there really is no reason to ever go Leafeon with your Eevee during your in-game playthrough. Nicest thing we can say about Leafeon in-game is that its Evo condition, the Mossy Rock, is usually located decently early in the game. If you can access Eevee, you can almost certainly access Leafeon. You can, but you probably wouldn't. In terms of competitive, well, here's a competition that you guys can participate in. Try and come up with a use for Leafeon, because I can't think of anything. If you can, go ahead and post a comment. Get this thing out of here. Evicted. If you're gonna set up Sun, you have so many insane options. So if you go through the effort of setting up Sun and you get in Leafeon, what do you actually get? Solar Blade. There it is. You have one kind of okay option that does half damage to almost everything. What? It's fast and has both Swords Dance and Leaf Storm. That seems like a setup you normally like. These are the people that think Leafeon is good. Like, they're making my argument for me. Sunny Day Solar Blade is a force to be reckoned with. People who think that Leafeon is good or even acceptable, you need to raise your standards. Play an Alliance Bannerman. Draw a minion, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. You're gonna need more than +1/+1 to get use out of this thing. If you're going through the effort of setting up Sun, there are so many better payoffs than Leafeon. Grass is ass on offense, that's beyond any form of debate, but Grass does usually have pretty powerful support options, and ironically the most support-focused typing here is the one that needs support. It needs sunlight, and it itself doesn't offer anything. It doesn't actually get any of the powerful pollen that other actually useful grass support Pokemon do. If you have hay fever, you don't have to worry about this thing. Doesn't even get aromatherapy, even though it does exude kind of a strange odor. We've collected some samples of Leafeon Musk. Go ahead and take a deep breath. Of that tropium haze. Leafeon is grass steel type with Spore and Leech Seed. back in reality, it's on the streets. Evicted. For design, I would probably say that Leafeon is my least favorite so far. I don't dislike it, but I feel like it's kind of incomplete. It kind of gives me the cordyceps infection vibes. Like Leafeon got leech seeded and it's kind of in the process of hopefully not going the Parasect path. But I sort of feel like there's a mega evolution full bloom Leafeon that we don't quite get to see. It's kind of like you just took Eevee and you threw some chia seeds on it. There's really no saving Leafeon within the constraints of the Eeveelution framework. As it is, it's undercooked. And it's a grass type, so if you cook it, it just dies, because it's weak to fire. Who ever heard of a cooked salad? I guess chopped salads are a thing? Leafeon, unfortunately, after thorough evaluation, I have to say that your lackluster monotyping and unacceptable move pool are not a good fit for my team, or anyone else's team. And for those reasons, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to chop you. I'd say give our next Eeveelution a warm welcome, but it's an ice type.
What killed the dragon types? Evolve 2.
Glaceon. Probably more appropriate to give it a chilly reception. Chilly reception is a real move, right? It sets snow and switches you out? There's a reason it works like that, by the way. In Japanese, when you make a bad joke, the reaction is you say, "Samui," cold. So bad jokes in Japanese are said to be like freezing cold. So I think it's Slowking telling a bad joke and then fleeing the stage. Fun fact, the only reason why I'm talking to you here now is because I gave a Japanese speech in a speech competition that was all about bad Japanese puns. And that led to me moving to Tokyo and working in TV, which eventually led to me making a YouTube channel where we get to talk about Glaceon! Glaceon, the fresh snow Pokemon. Abilities are Snow Cloak. This gives you evasion in hail, or in the current generation, snow. I think this is banned because it's just too cheesy, too RNG. Does nothing if there's no snow. Hidden ability Ice Body. It's like Rain Dish, but cold. So if it's snowing or hailing, then you regenerate 6% HP a turn. But you're an ice type, so you die in one hit, so this is actually not that useful. In terms of stats, we've got 65 HP, that's bad. 60 attack, really bad, but it's your off-attacking stat, so it doesn't matter too much. 110 defense, that's actually really good, but you're an ice type. Wow, 130 special attack, that's actually insane. That's really, really good. 130 special attack, stab ice, wow. 95 special defense is, it's fine, but paired with 65 HP, that's very bad. And 65 speed is way, way, way too slow. Oh! Well, glaciers aren't exactly known for their impressive ground speed, right? For moves, I hope you like ice coverage. Ice is a really good attacking type, and that's all you're getting. Oh, but what about water balls? And maybe you could do some shadow balling on Espeon. There are two pretty easy fixes to Glaceon that would make it a zillion times better. I don't know why this thing's 110 defense. Swap that with speed. Isn't ice supposed to be frail and shatter? But what might be even better than that, considering the change to snow, is just give this thing Slush Rush. With the snow defense buff, even with only 65 HP, this 110 defense actually becomes pretty formidable, especially if you manage to also set up Aurora Veil. And with Slush Rush, and with Slush Rush, and with Slush Rush, patching up the speed, and allowing you to fire off blizzards off of 130 base special attack, that might actually make Glaceon worth considering? For in-game, Ice is a very rare type, usually confined to the late game. This sort of made sense in Gen 1 where it was actually very powerful, but that's just been continued for the other games, even though Ice really sucks overall. Even though the Mossy Rock that allows you to access Leafeon is usually early game, the Icy Rock that allows you to freeze yourself into a Glaceon, it's usually late game, which makes Glaceon's availability very bad, the worst out of any of the Eeveelutions. So even though you could theoretically get some value out of 130 special attack ice moves, which are very strong, it's not happening because Glaceon is basically not in the game, and also you died before attacking because you have 65 base speed, and you're an ice type, so you take double damage from everything. The overworld Icy Rock is actually earlier than the Mossy Rock in XY. In the modern games, the Ice Stone is no longer an overworld object, it's literally just an evolution stone. And you can pick it up, just put it on your Eevee. Oh, your Eevee got a boo-boo? Make it feel better with a little bit of ice. Oh, whoops, it evolved into Glaceon. Oh. What's the competitive outlook for Glaceon? Does it break the meta? No. Turns out, doesn't even make it past the icebreaker stage of meeting teammates because no, you would never use this thing. Way too slow, way too frail. It's got 130 special attack, but it never actually gets to use it because it's dead. This thing has been a deadbeat for 5 generations. We are serving it an immediate eviction notice. Is it better or worse than Leafeon? Is it even worth attempting to argue over this? We're already at the bottom of the barrel with both of them. I could potentially see a universe where, under snow, Glaceon does something. I don't think there's anything in the forecast that could ever make me use Leafeon. So, I guess I'll go with Glaceon. Really grasping at straws to try and find things that are good about Glaceon? In Pokemon Conquest, the final boss of the main story, Oda Nobunaga, really cool guy. Well, you can make him even cooler if you hold off your starter Eevee's evolution up until basically the end of the game, and then you choose to go with the Glaceon Eeveelution. It's kind of a waste because you really should be going to Jolteon or Vaporeon way earlier, but if you decide to delay your promo, you basically turn your Eevee into Cold Roy, and pretty much the only upside of going the Cold Roy promo path is, like Roy with the Binding Blade, you absolutely clobber Nobunaga with your own PRF Icy Wind. Nobunaga stands no chance. Now, of course, you could just use a different Pokemon to deal with Nobunaga. There's no need to hobble your otherwise best Pokemon just for the final map. But you could, and that's more than what Leafeon does in Conquest. For design, I think they did a really good job differentiating Glaceon from Vaporeon and Suicune, even though they all have kind of a similar blue hue to them. Ironically, even though Suicune is literally the mascot of Pokemon Crystal, I think they did a great job making Glaceon appear to have crystalline features. It's sort of like a living snowflake. I really like the diamond ears. Very, very elegant. That's probably the word I would use. And I would say that the ice type is often associated with elegance. So I'm overall quite a fan of Glaceon's design, even though it's kind of simple. I think it's simple, sleek, and elegant. And even though Glaceon is another Eeveelution that has shed its fur, it does actually have a hairstyle. It's almost like it has bangs, which are very cute. Very unfortunate that we had to evict Glaceon and kick it to the curb. What's wrong with you? Why don't you get a job, you bum? While I hope you're not tired of Japanese economic policy talk, we talked about rice prices with Leafeon, but there's actually an ice term that goes with unemployment in Japan. What killed the job market? The Ice Age, or in Japanese, the Shushoku Hyogaki. So apparently between 1994 and 2004, as a result of people using too many water types in the bubble economy, there was a real lack of job prospects in Japan. So there's some trivia for you. Even in the IRL job market, water types are better at using ice moves than ice types. Although the employment ice age thawed in 2004, and Glaceon has only ever existed in the post-Dipod job market, which is 2007 and beyond, so... Actually, yeah, get a job, you bum. You got 4 feet? Well, that's 2 pairs of bootstraps, and yet I don't see any at all. How lazy can you be? As of the date of recording, it's Gen 9, the final Eeveelution added to the game. It's Sylveon! Now usually in Pokemon, when you make a wish, you get 50% of your HP back, after a 1-turn audit period to ensure that your recovery request is processed through the proper channels. But back in my day, when you made a wish, some fairly odd things could happen.
I wish I had an overpowered type.
Evolve 2.
Leafeon!
It's Sylveon, the Fairy-type Eeveelution. Any Sylvan Learning Center fans here? We're about to learn about Sylveon. Sylveon, the intertwining Pokemon, Japanese name Nymphia. You've probably noticed by now that although in English we have a formula for the Eeveelutions, they all end in Eon, there isn't the equivalent for the Japanese names. The only ones that have any sort of pattern are Leafeon, which becomes Leafia, Glaceon, which becomes Glaceon, and Sylveon, which becomes Nymphia. So they do have the same cute ending sound, but only for the most recent 3. Kinda weird. I almost wonder if it was a reaction to how popular the Eeveelutions were, and so they decided to also copy our unified suffix. Abilities are Cute Charm. This is a 30% chance when you're struck by a contact move from a Pokemon of the opposite gender to inflict them with the infatuation status. So less than 50% chance that your opponent is actually the opposite gender and not the same gender or genderless. Then they have to actually be using a contact move on you, so that cuts out almost all special attackers. And then there's a 30% chance that you actually inflict them with infatuation, and then if they're infatuated, it's a 50% chance they lose their turn. So calc all of that out, and what do you get? Not happening. Especially when you have the hidden ability, Pixelate. What Pixelate does is it changes your normal moves into fairy moves, and also gives them a power boost. I do believe it's 120%. Japanese name is Fairy Skin, the fairy skin. It's kinda creepy. Remember when the skins used to come from the game and you didn't need to buy the DLC? Used to actually be a 30% power boost, but I'm not wrong because it did get nerfed to 20%. Sylveon extending its feelers. Is this why it's the intertwining Pokemon? This is horrifying. This is like that thingified dog. Here's Sylveon's stat spread. 95 HP, pretty good. Attack and defense are both atrocious, so very, very weak physically. 110 special attack, that's pretty good. Hey, highest stats, special defense.
Your magic shall not save you.
No wonder this thing is so popular. And 60 speed is terrible. In terms of move pool, it's an Eeveelution. I hope you like fairy moves. Well, as we'll discuss later, you probably do because, hey, fairy's really overpowered. You get Magical Leaf, 60 base power, non-stab Psyshock. Could always go Shadow Ballin' on Espeon. Apparently we had Mystical Fire only in Gen 8, but there's since been a Witch Hunt, no more Mystics. When it comes to viable coverage moves for Sylveon, even through TMs, I would say you'll find them same section as the Fairy Tales. Fiction. For in-game, you're probably not going to be using Sylveon. It's not the worst thing ever. 110 special attack is pretty good, but its speed is horrendous. It is, I think, literally the slowest Eeveelution at 60. That is not enough. It's not the worst thing ever or anything, but for in-game playthroughs, you just want to sweep through everything, and with 60 base speed, you're not doing that. In its debut generation in particular, Sylveon gets a bit of an availability boost because it evolves through affection, not friendship, so you can just play some mini games with it, and as long as it knows a fairy move, it evolves almost instantly. But friendship isn't that hard to raise, and the elemental stones are literally instant. And since affection was removed, it's now just a normal friendship Evo. You just have to also know a fairy move. So I wouldn't say it's any more available than the other Eeveelutions. How about Sylveon in competitive? A major disadvantage of every Eeveelution is that they're a monotype. They depend very heavily on that monotype for their viability. And it turns out, when you have the best type in the game, it goes pretty far. Pretty much entirely on the back of the fact that it is a completely busted fairy type. We can say that this thing is viable. It's not particularly good in singles, but what makes Sylveon a menace in doubles is that it is just shrieking at you non-stop. Hey, don't you love Eeveelutions? It's my hyper voice. Because of Pixelate hyper voice, this thing non-stop assaults your ears with a very powerful fairy type attack. Not only does hyper voice become stronger than Moonblast because of Pixelate, because it is a sound move, it gets some additional benefits. This ain't Monster Hunter, there's no earplugs, so even if you're behind a substitute, you still can't escape the shrieking from Sylveon. And although Sylveon doesn't have a Mega Evo, it does gain a Megaphone in recent generations because Hyper Voice is a sound move, and that means that if you warm up your throat with some spray, using Hyper Voice then gives you +1 special attack, so it not only makes your Hyper Voice even stronger, it also buffs up any other special move you want to use as long as you're on the field. I like how it's obviously better than everything else here, but we're ranking it down out of spite. My personal opinion doesn't matter. If it were up to me, like just on vibes, as the kids would say, it's dead last. I really dislike this thing. But no, I'm putting it here because I think that's where it belongs. Alright, let's talk about Sylveon's design. I'm gonna lead with a disclaimer here. These tier lists are not scripted, but I do generally think of what I'm gonna say about each entry before I actually do the list. And I realize that what I intend to say about Sylveon, you could kind of Mad-lib it, switch around the subject, and it would sound like I'm talking about something else entirely. So I want to be firm and explicit. YouTube, don't ban me. Everything I'm about to say, I literally am talking about Sylveon and Pokemon and nothing else. Okay, so I really detest not only Sylveon's design, but also everything that it stands for. Starting with the color scheme. Reminder here, we talked about the design of all of the other Eeveelutions as well. It just happens that I like almost all of the other Eeveelution designs and color schemes, and I just don't like Sylveon's. I get that they have to differentiate it from Espeon, and Espeon is pink, but this, like, pink and baby blue combo, I'm just not a fan. I don't know anything about color theory. I'm sure there's a way to, like, scientifically explain this, but it feels like some colors, like, sort of naturally go together. Like gold and green, I think look really cool. Black and red, every edgelord's gotta have some black and red characters. I just think that pink and blue, whenever I see this, I get kind of, like, Concord vibes. Like, I can't say why I don't like it, but I just feel like I don't like it. I can put a color chart on screen, and I think you can see on this part that these colors do actually go together. I just personally am not a fan. Whenever I see this color combo, the only thing I can think of is cotton candy. Really reminds me of cotton candy, but I don't like cotton candy. It also feels like a color combo that maybe a child would do. The child probably is drawn already blue on the sky, right? And then maybe they grab the pink crayon, and then they draw Sylveon. In that sense, you could actually say it's a very successful color scheme, because it does feel very, like, childish and whimsical, which is a perfect fit for the fairy type. I think Sylveon also suffers from being the only Eeveelution that never appeared in a game with good animations. It's very possible that I might actually really like Sylveon, if it had some sick animation like Umbreon's glowing rings, but Sylveon has only ever appeared in Gen 6 and beyond, where every Pokemon looks super washed out and lifeless. Sylveon's probably supposed to be cute, but it also really creeps me out, especially those like soulless empty eyes. And I think we've seen in the anime that its flesh ribbons are actually like prehensile and they can reach out and grab you. I almost wonder if it's supposed to be creepy like that. Because fairies aren't actually all fun in games. Maybe this thing is supposed to make you a little uneasy. You should read what the Pokédex says about the ribbons. Uh-oh. By the way, the fact that I'm getting all of these Stellar Idol Project ads doesn't have to do with the fact that I searched Sylveon. These are on the other pages too. It sends a soothing aura from its ribbon-like feelers to calm fights. I mean, that doesn't sound too bad. When this Pokemon sights its prey, it swirls its ribbon-like feelers as a distraction. A moment later, it pounces at 60 base speed. By erasing enmity-erasing waves from its ribbon-like feelers, Sylveon stops any conflict. Wow, perfect for aggro control in your FF14 raid. Enmity erased! It emits a soothing aura from its ribbon-shaped organs. It wraps these appendages around quarrelers to instantly restore calm to the situation. Okay, so what's happening here is actually very friendly, but the way it's described is like a horror novel. Get along, or I'm gonna suck the fluids out of you with my ribbon organs. I do have to admit that a lot of my enmity towards Sylveon here, I guess I haven't been touched by its ribbon organs, enmity not erased, has to do with the fact that Sylveon is sort of the scapegoat for my general dislike of the fairy type as a whole, which is not Sylveon's fault. All of the Eeveelutions are certainly contenders for mascot of their type, but usually they lose out to another more representative Pokemon. Any Eeveelution that shares a starter type, they're gonna lose out to a starter. However, Sylveon is the fairy type Pokemon. It was literally the very first fairy type revealed in an art piece where it's clobbering Hydreigon. There's a couple reasons I don't like fairy types. The first is just that I don't vibe with them, as the kids say. They all tend to be very, very cutesy, and while there are some cute Pokemon that I really like Swinub. I know it's Swinub, but I really like Swinub. I like cute Pokemon, but I don't really like most of the cutie patootie fairies. It's just not really a style that appeals to me. And the other issue is that Fairy was introduced in Gen 6 explicitly as an anti-meta type. What were the meta types going into Gen 6? The meta types for sure were Dragon and Fighting. There was a meta called Drag Mag where you just loaded up on dragons that all just spammed Outrage. The only way you could hope to stop them was with a Steel type, because Steel was the only type that resisted Dragon. However, that's where the Mag part comes in, because Magneton magnet pulls to keep the Steel type in, then you eliminate them, or you just get some buff dudes because they can punch right through Steel. Zillion Dragon types, zillion Fighting types. What are my favorite types? Well, my absolute favorite is Fire. But below that, I would probably say my favorite types are Dragon, Fighting, and Dark. I think that Game Freak actually did a very good job of establishing the power of both Dragon and Fighting types just throughout the gameplay. Throughout Gens 1 to 5, Dragon types were extremely rare, typically endgame or even post-game. Dragon type trainers you almost never fought, and a large part of what made dragons so imposing in-game was the way that Dragon interacted with the type chart. Dragon is a good type. What are its resistances? Fire, water, grass, electric. What are the starter types? So no matter what starter you pick, even if you stomp the entire game with your starter, you get to Lance, and suddenly for the first time, your attacks don't work. You're in the Pokemon big leagues now. These are beasts you've never encountered before. Unless you traded the fresh water for the ice beam and you picked Blastoise, in which case, Lance stands no chance. But maybe you didn't know that. I also think that the introduction of Fairies as a super hard counter to Dragon has really devalued Dragon types as part of your adventure. Dragons used to be super rare, sequestered to the very end of the game, and if you wanted a Dragon type somewhat earlier, your best option was like Drudicon. But since Fairies are there to keep dragons in check, they now just kinda dump dragons everywhere. One of them can literally fall out of a tree and bonk you on the head. Oh wow, it's a dragon. And it's gonna take 30% of your donations. Don't trust Apple. The Pokemon world itself supported dragons being the best. Not to mention that the coolest thing in Pokemon, including all spin-offs in anime, Pokemon Conquest Nobunaga. Come Rayquaza, black as night. Shiny Rayquaza is his backup, by the way. He also has a Zekrom just chillin'. Fighting type also had its own training arc, where it was absolute dog water in Gen 1. Trash. But through hard work and perseverance, it got stronger throughout the generations. Big power spike in Gen 4 with close combat. And in Gen 5, they added a bunch of busted fighting types. And that's when they also really solidified the link between fighting types and heroism. Fighting is depicted as the heroic type. Even if you're weak, you can work hard and you can become a hero. Dark type wasn't exactly a huge meta force in Gen 5 the same way that dragons and fighting types were. So I'm gonna be honest, I think they just kinda caught astray when it comes to being annihilated by fairies. But if dark types are supposed to be evil, which they literally are in Japanese, and you have a type that is pretty closely associated with light, fairy types, good guys, then you sorta have to make the dark types lose to them. Now, even though Vanillite is my least favorite Pokemon of all time, you could definitely consider my Pokemon taste to be very, very vanilla. My favorite Pokemon is Charizard. I just like Pokemon that I think look cool. It's the dragons. It's Machamp. It's dark types. I like Shadow the Hedgehog. I do have an affinity for all of these very standard, cool, edgelord Pokemon. I like Nidoking. And the fact that all of those Pokemon not only lose to, but get utterly humiliated by fairy types, I kind of take it personally. It almost feels like a repudiation. You like that word? I learned it in middle school social studies. It almost feels like a repudiation of the old order. The Gen 1 to 5 order that they built up, dragons on top, and they just threw all of that in the trash can where you can find a Great Ball with fairies. New best type in the game, fairies. Don't like it? Too bad. Because fairy types are so blatantly overpowered, you see them everywhere. It's not just something you can ignore. I think it's also part of the reason why I sort of fell out of love with competitive Pokemon. It's certainly very childish, but back in the day, when you watched a competitive battle, it was like dragons blowing each other up with like outrage. And nowadays, it's just like fairy types shrieking at each other. I'm sorry, but this is just not something that I'm really interested in watching. It also just feels like there's tons of fairy type favoritism. When they introduced fairies, they also nerfed some of the staple elemental moves. Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Surf, Flamethrower, they all got a 5 power decrease from 95 down to 90. They're still good, this is mostly a symbolic change. But they also introduced Moonblast, which is sort of a fairy shifted version of these moves. But it has 95 base power. Why? It's just because Game Freak loves fairies. So that's why I'm furious at fairies. My ire, that's the Dragon Mastery skill, my ire isn't really directed at Sylveon, it's just the type as a whole, and unfortunately for Sylveon, it is the mascot of the fairy type. I do think that Dragon probably needed to be toned down a bit, but I probably would have made Fairy just a Dragon resist, not an immunity. And I also would make Fairy weak to normal. I think if you did those things, Fairy would actually be quite balanced. And it would really help out normal types as well. What's the next typing you'd like to see an Eeveelution of? We were robbed of the Dragon-type Eeveelution in Gen 9. When you finish the boss battle with the Eeveelution trainer, she literally gives you Draco Meteor. I think it's a pun on it being called Starfall Street. They should have a Dragon-type Eeveelution. It evolves at a high level because it's a dragon. It has better stats than the other Eeveelutions. And it gets a signature Dragon-type move called Bad Ending. That's super effective against fairies. Dragons get slain in fairy tales? Not in this one. Die, Sylveon! That's the very childish, pro-dragon and buff boy, anti-fairy rant. But no hard feelings, Sylveon. It's not your fault. It's the fairy type as a whole. I'm sorry. No hard feelings? Let's shake on it. It's called a handshake. So you put your paw here. No, the paw doesn't go to my face. No, not to my face, not to my face. And that's our Eeveelution tier list. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to disagree in the comments. What I don't want to see are comments accusing me of forgetting Eeveelutions. Excuse me, you ranked Flareon? But what about Charmeleon? What about Kecleon? What about Lyon? Is that Lion?
That's Leon.
Oh, it is Leon. What about Leon? Fine. As a concession to you pedants, Bug is a terrible type. We'll go ahead and rank one more Eon for you guys. Choose files. I bet none of you thought of this. Here's Finneon. Finneon, the wingfish Pokemon. Swift Swim or Storm Drain. And if you go the extra mile to unlock the hidden ability, you could get Water Veil. Oh, these stats are basically unevolved Eevee, right? I guess the water typing is better than normal. This thing needs to take a swift swim down the nearest storm drain. Next time you flush, maybe take advantage of that opportunity to get this thing off your team. Although it evolves into Lumineon, I'm not sure I would call this much of a glow up. What the hell is this? 460 BST really isn't that bad. And even though there's 3 stats that are 69, I wouldn't call this nice. No water type believes it's responsible for the C tier. Not a single stat over 100. And both of its attacking stats are hopeless. I think that an actual IRL fish might be more useful in combat than this thing. And that fish might not even be in the water. So how do we rank this Eon? Ferb, I know what we're gonna do today. We're putting Finneon dead last. Congratulations, Leafeon, you're no longer the bottom of the Eon tier list. Now you might be wondering, why did we rank this Eon out of all of the potential neglected Eon candidates? Well, it's so that at the very end of the tier list, we could say, Finn.
Hey, thanks for watching the Eeveelutions tier list. And special thanks to Olyo for this wonderful Fire Emblem Fates inspired thumbnail. Which path will you choose? How about the path that leads you to Olyo's YouTube channel? If you like my videos, you'll like theirs too. Thanks again to all of the mighty Patreons for keeping me clothed in premium Eevee pelts. And thanks to you, the viewer, for watching to the very end. I'll see you in the next video, but for now, Finn.